Hello, everyone. Such an honor and pleasure to be here with all of you. Love you, Dayanandaji. I love so many people in this room, some of which I've known for many, many years, and some of which I've just come to meet you, but I love you all. I love you all with all of my devotion. So, few things first, just getting it out of the way, no cell phones, no laptops, and I prefer if no one took notes, right? Pasha is running security. If someone happens to be caught on their cell phone, you will be handled appropriately. I'm going to start with a brief sadhana. And then we have a lot to cover, so I don't know if we'll be taking a break today prior to lunch. So if you need to step out and one of the nakshatras doesn't specifically apply to you, that would probably be a good time. Oh, let's all chant Om 3 times together. Gananam tva ganapatim havamahe kavim kavinamupamastravastamam jaistarajam brahmanam brahmanaspatana srinbanu tibihi siddhasadanam vakratunda mahakaya suryakoti samaprabha nirvignam kurume deva sarvakayeshu sarvada siddhi buddhi shakti sahita Shriman Mahaganatipataye Namo Namah Nirvignam Kuru Om Ya Kundendu Tusharahara Tavala Ya Sudvavasravrata Ya Vina Varadanda Manditakara Ya Sweda Padmasana Ya Brahma Chuta Sankara Pravritir Vihir Devai Sarda Vandita Saman Batu Saraswati Bhagavati Nishesha Jajapa Om Guru Brahman Gurur Visnuhur Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Guruhu Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Sri Guruve Namah Tasmai Sri Guruve Namah Tasmai Sri Guruve Namah Om Dari Sankhatu Sarabam Kasiro Dharna Sambhavam Namami Sasinam Somam Sambormakuta Bhusanam Dari Sankhatu Sarabam Kasiro Dharna Sambhavam Namami Sasinam Somam Sambormakuta Bhusanam Dari Sankatu Sarabam Kesiro Dharna Sambhavam Namami Sasinam Somam Sambormakuta Bhusanam Om Shram Srim Shram Sa Somaya Nama Om Shram Shrim Shram Sa Somaya Nama Om Shram Shrim Shram Sa Somaya Nama Om Shram Shrim Shram Sa Somaya Nama Om Tvameva Matacha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhu Sasaka Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Amriteshwari Nama Tvameva Sarvam Amriteshwari Nama Tvameva Sarvam Matamritananda Mahima Bharani ki jai Hari Om Om Namah Shivaya. Okay, let's have some fun. I just kind of want this to be a hangout. I know that was all like dramatic and serious, but we're literally just hanging out here today and talking nakshatras. So I need to kind of be on track on time, so I'm doing a short introduction and just tell you a little bit how my journey as an astrologer and how this research came to be. My grandmother, who's actually a Pennsylvania Supreme Court justice, Republican, was actually obsessed with astrology. So when I was born, she had all of our Western charts done, and I was, as a young child, I was always told all these things about my chart, this thing about, and she would tell me about my chart, and I would be like, okay, Grandma. I didn't necessarily resonate with it. My uncle Durgadas, he followed the Hindu path, at a teenage age, and he would take me to his yoga studio in downtown Philadelphia, and Yoga on Main in Manioc, if anyone's familiar with the area. And he had this buddy named Francis Dunner. He was actually a musician who was a Vedic astrologer. And at 9 years old, I was introduced to the word Jyotish, and I found this, I was attracted to it right away. I felt this calling to it. I felt this resonance to it, and it was like I barely knew Sanskrit, but I was obsessed with the word Jyotish, right? And I would hang out with this guy who was my uncle's friend who did consultations, and I would ask him to tell me about this ancient science, even though at the age of 9 years old, you can't digest that type of information, but the passion was there. And the interest was there. And, there was a time in my life where I was about 19 years old, and I was a freshman at the university in Philadelphia, Drexel University, an engineering college. And my uncle asked me one summer if he wanted me to go on tour with him. He was doing a tour of Canada and the Midwest. So it was Toronto, Calgary, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and Vancouver. I know we have some Canadians up here in the front row. And then we went to Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Chicago, and we did all of these cities. And I went on a kirtan tour with him, and I found my voice there, right? And I learned so much about the Hinduism and the chakras, and I was fascinated by it. And my uncle at that time, he wanted to get married, but he didn't want to do a traditional marriage. And my uncle's wife, or his girlfriend at the time, her name is Meera. Her guru is Mata Amritananda Mayama, or Ammanji. So at the age of 19, they were going to get married by Amma. So, as a nephew, and he's my godfather, I thought, okay, I'll go, right? And I was at the time taking a lot of psychedelic drugs, right? This was trying to expand my consciousness the short-term way. And I remember when Amma was coming into the room, and I saw all these people worshiping her, and I thought, these people are nuts, right? How could they be worshiping a human being? Like, how demented or diluted are they? They don't even know how powerful I am because I've been taking acid. Right? So she comes in this big procession, you know what I mean? And everyone puts their hands out to get just a touch of the guru, you know? But I was like, I'm going to show her who I am, right? So I was concentrating all what I thought was my individual power. Now in hindsight, I realized it was just pure ego. And I said, I'm going to put my hand out there, and Amma, when she reaches my hand, she's going to pause and recognize me, right? So she comes in, I put my hand out there, and her hand comes and it touches my hand. Next thing I know is I wake up with my back on the ground and a group of 30 or 40 people surrounding me. I asked them, what happened? They said, you've been passed out for about 15 minutes. Shaktipat. Not darshan, she annihilated my ego. From there, I came to worship her. The next time I saw her, she did an official conversion ceremony with me, and I became a Hindu. And, the journey of life, it continued. And, I was living in Peru training to become an ayahuasca shaman, and we had to drink ayahuasca 3 times a week for months. And my parents were like concerned. And I came back to America, and I told my dad I got to go back out to Iquitos, Peru to finish this shaman certification. And my dad said, I'll pay for you to go to graduate school anywhere in the world if you don't go back to Peru. I said, all right, Dad, let's do it. I had an Ayurvedic consultation with a close friend of my uncle's named Antonio, known as Vishnu, and he revolutionized my health. And I was so inspired by that I found the Ayurvedic Institute in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I enrolled there. This was in 2011. And I was just like, taking the classes, loving Ayurveda, and Dr. Vasant Lad is the teacher there. He's an incredible man. Very humble, very intelligent. And they had an elective on Jyotish, right? Simon Chikoisky, some of you may know him. He's a good guy, great astrologer. And I took his elective Jyotish. And within the second or third week, Simon comes up to me and he goes, you should probably do this for the rest of your life. And I said, are you sure? Because I'm in Ayurveda school, and I think my grandfather was a medical doctor. All my family is lawyers, so there was a lot of pressure in my family to have what's called a real job. And so I was, I thought Ayurveda, it was going to be close enough to a real job that I was going to be able to actually, make a successful career at it, like Dr. Lad. So I didn't really pursue Jyotish, but I became fascinated by it, almost as a secondary hobby. Then I took a second year of Jyotish with Simon, in my second year as an Ayurvedic lifestyle consultant, or whatever the terminology is. And I became so engrossed in the Jyotish that all of my classmates started asking me for consultation. Then they started telling the other members of the school that weren't in the class for I had been studying Jyotish for a year and a half, right? And I was so busy doing, 6 or 7 consultations a day that I wasn't able to do my Ayurvedic studies. I had 2 more months before I was going to graduate as an Ayurvedic practitioner, but I couldn't study for the final examination for Ayurveda because all I could think about was Jyotish. And I met with Dr. Lad, and I go, Dr. Lad, I got to drop out. He's like, what are you talking about? You have 2 months left, right? You have 2 months till you graduate. And then I handed him my chart, and I said, I just don't feel the calling as an Ayurvedic practitioner. I think I want to be a Jyotish. And he says, while as like a professional, I can't encourage you to drop out of school with 2 months left. I see your Dharma as a Jyotish, and I support and empower you in it. And that's when he gave me the name Śruti. And I asked him what it meant. He goes, Kashana Kashana, moment to moment, ati, to transcend, to go beyond, right? Jyotish is this science, right, where we're trying to look at a moment, right? We're trying to measure specific moments in time, when time itself is arbitrary. It's immeasurable, right? We are existing now in this moment. We've also always been here, right? We'll also never be anywhere. There's this transcendence of time and place that we experience in Jyotish. And so, I'm just so grateful. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about that. When I first got into Jyotish, I did, what most Jyotish, which is Rashi-based Jyotish, right? We know the 12 signs, right? Aries, Taurus, Gemini, so on and so forth. But as I got more into my Jyotish, I started to have no care for the constellations. I lost all interest in them, right? And I became fascinated and obsessed with the Nakshatras, right? And eventually, I stopped using signs in my consultations. I stopped using signs in my teachings. And I just started using nakshatras, right? So there's kind of like, different forms of astrology, and I honor all the Rashi-based Jyotish, right? But my passion is nakshatra-based Jyotish. And so for the past 2 years, Dr. Pai has been supporting my research by letting me present some of it on his channel. And I was just so excited to be able to share it here with all of you. So it's the Dharma of the 27 Nakshatras. The idea or the concept behind this research is that not Dharma like in terms of when we're looking at a chart, the Dharma houses, the Artha Kama Bhava, the Moksha Bhavas, like not those type of associations. Literally the definition of Dharma, right? The higher energy, the higher purpose, right? The nakshatras, they have a purpose, right? They have a purpose, and it's not to create personality traits, right? The nakshatras are not here to say, oh, yes, you'll have, you'll be happy and jovial, and you might be critical, and that's like some little like side effects, right? The nakshatras have a evolutionary spectrum, right? We're all here on this earthly plane to learn lessons, right? I mean, in my earlier experience of life, I used to think that life was pleasurable, right? That I had a hedonistic tendency. I thought the point of life was to have a good time, right? And that led to overdoses. I almost died many times. Then I found that actually life, through my personal experience in the study of Jyotish, is simply about spiritual evolution and learning as many lessons as possible. And so in this research, we're going to talk about this evolutionary spectrum of each nakshatra, the lessons they contain, the patterns they contain, the evolutionary spectrum. When I'm talking about a nakshatra, it doesn't matter which of the Navagrahas is in them. It doesn't matter which bhava they're in. It doesn't matter, they will get activated through transit and dasha, through gochara and dasha, because that creates the karma Phalam, right? But if you have any planet in any of these nakshatras, in any of your divisional charts, which essentially, if you look at all of the various vargas, you'll find some nakshatra position in all nakshatras, which means we're all here to learn every single lesson that is possible to learn, right? So that would mean technically all of the lessons of all 27 nakshatras apply to all of us, right? The question is, oh, well, what time are they activated? Which lessons are in a higher hierarchy, right? So the question is, okay, this lesson is at a stronger hierarchy at certain times of our life, right? But then the way that the dashas and the transits come into play, they get reactivated. So here comes the lesson. It's activated through dasha and gochar, right? You have some level of integration of the lesson, right? Then the dasha and gochar shifts and another lesson comes in, right? Then you try to integrate this lesson through the karma phalam of the nakshatra. Then the other lesson comes in. And guess what? That one that just came, it's coming back, and they layer on top of each other, right? So that's just a little bit of the intro of kind of like where this research is coming from, which is, there's this predictive side of Jyotish, and I honor it, and I do it in my consultation because we need hope and we need reality, right? So the balance of hope and reality, and we use prediction to help give people hope, but also a dose of reality. But it's really about we're all here to grow, learn, and love, right? And we can use the lessons that are contained in each of the nakshatras as a blueprint for how to grow spiritually. So that's at the heart of this research. Okay, so let's get started. So just as a show of hands, who here identifies with Ashwini Nakshatra? Do we have some Ashwini peeps? Cool. Okay, cool. So Ashwini is in the beginning of Aries. It's the beginning of Aries to 13.2 degree. It's K2. Okay, no nakshatra is ruled by planets, right? That's not possible, right? The planets are demi-devas, right? So no demi-deva can rule over a nakshatra, right? Only a devata can rule over it. So each of the planets influences a nakshatra, and you can tell a lot about that, but they don't rule over the nakshatra. It's just an energy that's associated with it. So Ketu, the influencing graha, right? Ashwini Kumar, the head of the horse, right? The head of the horse. When it comes to Ashwini Nakshatra, we'll start with a little bit of a story, and that's that the Ashwini Kumars, the Ashwini twins, they were also deva-like, right? Demigods, right? Yet not raised to a point of being Mahadevas, right? They weren't actual pure devatas, even though they're considered devatas here as a nakshatra devata, right? Due to their lineage, they weren't pure devatas. They were demi-devatas, which means they were mortal, right? They can't live forever, right? So they thought, well, we can do something about this, right? We can actually create some type of distraction. We can consume some soma, we can consume some amrita, and we can become immortal, right? In the process of this, they convinced some priests to be able to conduct the ceremony. Indra got pissed off, beheaded them, and put 2 horse heads. Right? They actually kept the horse heads on the side to replace their heads that were decapitated. Right? This is at the root of Ashwini Nakshatra, right? Which is the evolutionary spectrum of what do I want? Right? I want something. In life, we're given so much. Right? I mean, literally, life is the greatest gift that exists. You would think that would be enough, just to be alive would be enough, right? But due to the human condition, there is an essential part of us that needs more, that wants more, right? So part of the Dharma of Ashwini Nakshatra is to wrestle with this idea of this is not enough. I want more. What's that more that I want, right? And that has a very, gross dualistic spectrum, because when it comes to wanting more, we have all 3 of the gunas. We have tamas, rajas, and sattva, right? So when we want more, what the question is like, yes, it's specific things. So, even though I have $100,000, I want $1 million, even though I'm married and happily married, I want to cheat on my partner, even though these are some of the lower vibrational elements, right? That the lower vibrational element of Ashwini Nakshatra is nothing is good enough. I need more to be happy. I need more to feel more powerful. Hitler had a strong Ashwini position, right? There's always more, right? But, you give a mouse a cookie, he wants a glass of milk, right? So when you get more, you want more. And it's this endless cycle of constant want. So the real, Dharma of Ashwini Nakshatra is to be grateful for what you have, right? To yearn for more, especially on this higher spectrum of desiring things which have a purity to them, like desiring the goodness of humanity, desiring to be close in your relationships with your family, desiring to be healthy. We'll talk more about this. The health is important for Ashwini. But when it comes to wanting more, not being grateful for what you have will always bring you suffering. You'll never be able to appreciate or enjoy life if you're always yearning for more, right? The Ashwini twins had a beautiful divine birth, right? Well, it wasn't good enough. They wanted more, right? We're given life, right? We're given 70, 80, 90 years of life unless there's some karma that takes us out before, right? But we want to live to 100. We want to live to 120. We want to live to 140, right? What's good enough, right? That's the question to ask yourself, Ashwini ji. So the next thing is that the Ashwini Kumars are considered to be associated with Ayurveda, right? So there's this deep, what is gratitude for what is, right? Gratitude for what is realizing that we're given life and to not take it for granted, which means we have to keep our bodies, minds, and spirits in balance, right? So there's this really beautiful dharmic aspect of Ashwini Nakshatra, which is the body, mind, spirit balance, right? There's plenty of people with Ashwini positions that have no idea what Ayurveda is, right? They might even actually only be associated or have some awareness of allopathic medicine or Western medicine as it's known, right? But very often they'll still be trying to be concerned with, what type of diet should I eat? What type of sleep schedule should I have? Like these things that try to keep ourselves in balance with our body and our minds, right? Our body is a temple, right? And instead of trying to find some shortcut of how we can live forever, all we need to do is sustain our physical system, right? So I like to highlight this aspect of the body, mind, and spirit balance, right? The last thing I want to say about Ashwini here is that there is a lower energy of Ashwini, which is selfish, right? I mean, there's this whole vibration that they wanted to live forever, right? And they're not really concerned about anyone else. They're just concerned about their own immortality and doing whatever it takes to get there, right? So then the higher evolutionary spectrum of Ashwini Nakshatra is service towards healing others. And that's why Ayurveda comes from this, right? It has this energy of, okay, well, I have my own body, mind, and spirit balance. So then how can I help other people find their own body, mind, and spirit balance? The giving what you have, the sharing of the gift that you have. So there is this beautiful energy, which is actually the service of healing. And it can manifest through different forms of medicine, but it can also manifest through just the way that we talk to people, how we empower other people, right? I mean, the Ashwini, they so yearn for a sense of power. Once you find that sense of power within yourself, then you can help empower other people, right? We can help empower other people to make their own decisions in their life that are best for them, not take away their power, right? The lower side of Ashwini is, I'm so powerful, now everyone bow down to me. The higher side of Ashwini is we're all equally powerful, and I want to help you see this. So who here has a Ashwini position they'd like to share? Pashaji, you want to give someone a mic and they can tell me? Tell me your Nakshatra position, your ascendant, the house, and the planet in the Nakshatra.
This is so good. Brother, why won't you let me take notes?
So I have an Ashwini rising. My lagna, it's about 10 degrees, 51 minutes. Mangal sits in Ashwini, in the first house. Vakri, retrograde, at like 1 degree, 51 minutes. So yeah.
Beautiful.
And it's Vargotama in a lot of charts.
And can I ask where your K2 is?
Mrigashira.
In Mrigashira?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because we just, with the influence in Graha, we look for a deposition. So, by the way, that's a great Ashwini position, and all Ashwini positions are great. But Mars has a beautiful, functionally, benefic position there. You're going to be given, especially as the ascendant, when an ascendant nakshatra is there, it's a lifelong thing. You know how I talked about like the layering of lessons? It's something that's constant. It will be there your whole life. It was there when you were born. It will be there when you take your last breath. The lessons of Ashwini are always with you in that hierarchy of lessons. They're at the top of they're up there, right? Mars, Mangal, is going to give you passion and action and energy to actually want to investigate these things, right? You're going to have this enthusiasm to actually want to look into these things, and you're going to have the vitality to be able to do it without becoming depleted or exhausted, because Mangal, with Mangal and Ashwini are going to create a Nakshatra karma Phalam there that is going to allow that to be associated with what you have to offer the world. Now, of course, the downside of this, right, is that when you are in ego, or when you are not eating properly, not balancing things, that karma Phalam will take away all your energy. You will be depleted, you will be exhausted, you will be potentially have blood issues, liver issues, issues with rakta. So that's just a little bit there. Okay. Just in the sake of time, let's move to the next nakshatra. Bharani, 13.2 to 26.4 Aries. It's Shukra influenced. Yama Yoni. Story of this one, right? Yama. Everyone's so afraid of Yama, right? Yama is the last devata to be afraid of. There's a reason why Yama is in the position that he is because there is no devata that is kinder, that is fairer, right? They call Yama the judger of souls, right? So we live in a world where, sometimes with the organized religion side of things, when we think of, purgatory, right? When our soul comes to being judged, it's going to be judged in a harsh way, right? Yama is just waiting to forgive you. He is just waiting to meet you where you're at and love you, right? It's nothing to fear of Lord Yama. So I say this about Bharani Nakshatra is that, according to what I've read in the scriptures, is that most of us are not blessed to be aware of the reincarnation process, right? We're kind of blinded from it, right? We have our last breath, our memory is cleared, and then all of a sudden we're a baby, right? There's no kind of in between, right? I read this in one of my texts. Those that have a prominent Bharani position, so normally Yama sends his Yamadutas, which are like these kind of like little minions, that come and they take you to Svarga, the celestial dimension, and you're kind of whole blind in this whole process. But if you have a prominent Bharani position, you have the potential to learn every single lesson that it's possible for you to learn here in this lifetime, in this incarnation, right? As a result, instead of Yama sending his Yamadutas, Yama comes himself on a beautiful water buffalo. Your eyes are opened and you're sent into the astral realm with pure vision, right? If any of you have been to Disney World, I picture this to be like kind of like Space Mountain, right? Geometric shapes, beautiful colors, triangles, squares, all sorts of dimensions coming at you, right? And you feel this sense of God, right? And you realize that in this process that it's all part of the journey, right? There's this reincarnation process that's going on and you're aware of it. It's happening either way, but the awareness of it is such a gift. The awareness of it is such a gift. So the Dharma of Bharani Nakshatra is to resolve all your karmas, which is a tall task, right? Essentially suggesting that because Lord Yama, this judging energy, the way that we perceive it, I say this about Bharani natives, that they would never do anything alone that they wouldn't do in front of a large group of people because God is always watching, right? God is always watching. There's no such thing as a secret. There's no such thing as getting away with something karmically, right? Just because you don't get caught does not remove the karma, right? So there's this energy that the Bharani kind of, and in the beginning of the life of the Bharani, it can manifest as paranoia, right? Oh my God, God is always watching, right? I can't sleep. I'm up all night. You know, there's this terror aspect of it. I don't know what to do because I feel like I'm being watched, right? But remember, as they come to get closer with Yama over the course of their life, they realize that that energy which is watching them is loving, kind, and compassionate. Not critical, harsh, and fierce. And there is that side of it, but I just want to highlight the compassionate, loving aspect of this Devata. But, so the Dharma is the willingness to recognize that there's no such thing as a secret. There's no such thing as getting away with anything. There's no such thing as doing something that is immoral or unethical and it not creating karma, right? There's always a reaction to our actions. Physics shows us this, right? So it is the same with karma. And the Bharani person, they will feel the repercussion of their actions, right? Which leads them on a high moral and ethical kind of elevation. So, and the yoni is associated with this nakshatra, right? The yoni, right? And it's Venus, Shukra influenced. And part of what that is trying to show you is that, like, there's a bunch of people that I've looked at their charts, but when their Bharani Nakshatra position is unevolved, they're very, like, hedonistic, right? They're very pleasure-seeking. There's no such thing as too much good food, puri and paneer, right? We all love it, right? It has its place in time, right? There's no such thing as too much good music. There's no such thing as too much vacation. There's no such thing as too much, right? So the evolutionary energy of Bharani Nakshatra is to reel that energy in and say, there's definitely such a thing as too much, right? Because when we overindulge in pleasure, we don't actually get to appreciate it. Right? There's something in these Aries positions where it's like gratitude and appreciation is a huge theme, right? Because that pioneering energy that's in that constellation, these nakshatras are trying to correct that energy to balance it out. So it's trying to understand that instead of pleasure being something that is based in quantity, we want it to be based in quality. Right? The evolutionary position here, the Dharma of Bharani Nakshatra, is to emphasize the quality of things over the quantity of things. right? Some very difficult positions that are in Bharani, it's like a flip, it's like a switch that's flipped, and we can't do quality. We can only do quantity, right? This is common in things like addictions, right? Where, oh, we can't just enjoy one glass of red wine every 2 weeks. We want the whole bottle, right? We can't just invest a little in the stock market. We need to be pulling the slot machine, right? This energy of, so if you can't, as a Bharani position, restrict the quantity, it's better to just restrain altogether, right? Some of these lessons, we can't integrate them all in this lifetime, right? And part of this energy is knowing yourself, right? With all of these nakshatras, it's knowing yourself. So that means if you know that, when you eat a piece of chocolate, you want 3 bars, right? Maybe you shouldn't eat chocolate, right? Maybe you should have some strawberries or something. Okay, so it's this energy of also knowing where our hedonistic tendency, because what do they say? Everyone has a vice, right? If you're a Bharani nakshatra position, you have a vice, right? And it could be pretty detrimental, right? So understanding that vice and the yoni, there can often be like, romantic addictions, sexual addictions, which come up in this position. So a lot of times, like some remedies for whatever it is, it's like brahmacharya or monogamy, I've had some Bharani positions that are like, in like these polyamorous, like quadruplet, like relationships or whatever, you know what I mean? And it's just like, it never works out, right? I mean, I'm not judging, right? I'm here to love all of you equally, but there's this idea that it's like, if the evolutionary dharmic spectrum of Bharani Nakshatra is to learn all of the karmas that you learn, to know yourself and know what your temptations and your indulgences are, and to restrain them or put quality towards them instead of quantity is definitely part of the evolutionary spectrum here. The last thing I want to say is that because of Lord Yama, there can be this paranoia of death, right? This fear of dying, it's part of the human experience, it's part of the human condition to be afraid to die, right? But the Dharma of Bharani is to conquer the fear of death, right? So in the lower side of it, we're like, oh my God, I'm afraid to walk out of my house, because I might get hit by a car. I'm afraid to fly on a plane because you never know, right? That is being stuck in a very low frequency of Bharani. To say, okay, there is a risk here, right? There's a risk when we walk outside, there's a risk that we take, but to conquer the fear of death is at the root of the Dharma of this nakshatra, right? Which means if you have an aversion to something, don't run away from it. You have to conquer the fear. You have to face the fear. You have to look at that fear in the eye and say, bring it on. Because Yama is like, nice. Yama is like, great. You've conquered this aspect of fear. You're that much closer to being able to witness the reincarnation process. Right? I think this is a very special nakshatra in terms of, I'm not sure, a lot of other nakshatras offer this same kind of opportunity to experience the reincarnation process the way that this one does. Who here has a Bharani position they would like to, okay.
Okay, I have Bharani, and I have my moon in Bharani at 2242 in the 10th house in Aries. My ascendant is Cancer, 26.38 in Ashlesha. And what was the other thing you needed?
No, that's fine.
That's it, okay.
You said Ashlesha ascendancy? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I would look at that kind of position, and I would look at that Bharani position. What planet is there in the 10th? Moon.
Moon, Mars, and Ketu.
Okay, so there's a stellium. And there's Ketu, Moon, Mars, Ketu. Okay. Oh, so then the Ketu goes to the ascendant because you're a Cancer ascendant as well.
Right,
Yeah.
the Mars and K2 are in Ashwini.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I want to say about that 10th house, kind of the evolution, because we're taking away out of the prediction side here, and we're saying, okay, well, what type of energy is trying to manifest here? For your career to be unlocked, right? For your life purpose, for you to be able to do something on a daily basis that feels very nourishing, happy, and supportive to you, you have to learn these lessons. Right? If you are afraid to die, you'll never have a happy career. If you are overindulging in your vices and your pleasures, you'll never feel satisfied in Art Bhav. Right? By reeling in what you experience as temptation, by facing fear head on, there's a limitlessness to your career, to your passion. Once you conquer these energies and these lessons of Bharani Nakshatra, whatever you do in your life, even if you had all the money in the world, you'd still choose to do it.
Correct.
Okay, cool. Okay, moving on. Of course. Krittika Nakshatra. People get scared of Krittika. 26.4 Aries to 10 degrees of Taurus. It's Surya, it's Agni, it's razor sword, right? Krittika, cutting, sharp, fierce, intense, right? I like to call Krittika the critical one. Nice. Critical, right? Critical. They want to be able to perceive things exactly as they are, right? When they are looking at something, they are analyzing it on a million different levels. They are able to see something, cut away all of the Maya, cut away all of the illusion that is associated with it, with the sword, with the razor, right? And get to what it really is all about, right? There is this dharmic energy which wants to release the power of Agni, right? The satisfaction of what life is truly about, to have meaning and passion in everything that you do. And we need to cut away all of the extraneous things which are not associated in order to find this, right? And so we need to be critical. We need to be discerning. We need to be vigilant, right? There's these qualities of Krittika Nakshatra: vigilance, the ability to perceive things accurately, which are extremely beneficial, because it's going to lead to all of these things which are not supposed to be in our lives. It's going to remove them. It's going to eradicate them. It's going to allow a very pure light to shine, right? But that critical nature can be debilitating, right? That critical energy can manifest as judgment, right? And that judgmental energy, the way that it comes out through the eyes when it looks at something, when there's a Krittika position, it's like cutting it up, right? It's like there's this vegetable here, Krittika looks at it, the vegetable's already cut up before the knife touches it, right? So that has to do with our interaction with human beings as well, right? The Krittika person, the lower vibration of it, I'm looking at you, and I've already thought a million things about how you're lesser than me. I want to separate you from me so I can feel better about myself. Right? There's this critical nature, this intensity, which it wants to see the small pieces of everything, but in the process, it's cutting everyone up and throwing them in the trash, right? Disempowering them, taking away their power. Why? We see this in society, in culture, and power dynamics, where it's one person, as they come to a rise in power, especially in this modern capitalistic society that we live in, one person is attempting to rise in power. How do they get there? By walking on other people's backs, right? I'm going to get up to this higher place by stepping on you and crushing you, right? You know, the Krittika energy, this critical energy, this lesson to how do we evolve when we're using our discernment to not put it onto other people, right? The answer is, you know, this energy of meeting people where they're at, right? I would describe the evolutionary spectrum as that even though we can be discerning, like it's not like if you have a strong Krittika position, you can just turn off the switch, right? It's not like, oh, you know, critical energy comes from intelligence. So unless you can't like just turn off your intelligence, you know what I mean? You have to be, it's going to be active there, but we have to open up the heart, right? We can be critical, right? But the higher dharma of the Krittika Nakshatra is non-judgment, right? On one side of Krittika is judging everything and then giving it a value, right? On the higher side of Krittika is judging everything and then saying, okay, great. I'm going to meet this energy where it's at, right? Now that has a late weight to it too. Meeting people where they're at, that can have this connotation of like, okay, I'm going to meet you where you're at, and that's less than me, right? I'm going to meet you where you're at, but you're a new soul. You're unevolved, right? That's not non-judgment. That is a perversion of this lesson, right? So the real energy here is meeting other people where they're at, even though that's your nature, saying, you know what? There's no, this critical energy, I need to drop it. But you have to be real with it first, right? We analyze, we interpret things, we see things for what they are as Krittika, but then we open up our hearts. So there's this balance of non-judgment and judgment that's at the root of Krittika. And then the other thing that I wanted to say here is that the Krittika energy, it wants to unlock that Agni, which wants to help you reach your full potential, right? It wants to help you reach your full potential. And so in order to do that, we need to be open to criticism, right? Sometimes when we're so critical, right, we're our own worst enemies, right? That's Krittika. That Krittika energy, that criticism, it goes out towards others, but it's also, if we look in the mirror, it's coming right at us, right? So that means that same, reeling it in of this critical energy, we want to put that to ourselves. But that doesn't mean we can't be open to constructive criticism, right? Because if we're not open to constructive criticism, right? I was hanging out with Dr. Pai yesterday. We were hanging out till midnight, just chilling out. And we talked about, okay, how can this conference be better in the future, right? Quality, different classes that are being taught, the experience of everyone. Right, my Jupiter and Krittika in the 4th house, aspecting my 10th. I want to be open to this, right? I only want this to be a better experience next time that we have it, right? That's how things grow. That's how Agni is unlocked, by openness to constructive criticism. So this energy of Krittika is also about a willingness to say, okay, I'm open to criticism, but not beating yourself up. Right? It's all about balance with all these things. Okay, I'll take some criticism, but then I'm going to take this rope and whip myself on the back. Oh, what a shitty conference. Da-da-da-da-da. Right? No, that's not the answer either. Right? No, it's okay. It can be improved. It's not perfect. It never will be. Right? How do I stay open to these things? So as you can see, there's a nuance to Krittika here with the criticism. It's necessary, it's part of the gifts, it's how you unlock and get to the truth of things. But it's also needs to be open to constructive criticism without beating yourself up. So there's all of these kind of energies which are going on. And then the last thing I want to say about Krittika Nakshatra is that it's a karmic ancestral nakshatra, right? There are these shoes to fill, Here you are. This is your family karma. Fill them, right? So there's a lot of pressure to fill these shoes, right? I have Jupiter and Krittika in the 4th house. Be a doctor, be a lawyer, so on and so forth, right? That is the conscious energy of your living family members that want this type of thing for you. But I like to see it this way, that when your family members leave their physical form, they actually want what's best for you. They don't want you to be what they want you to be. They want you to be what's best for you. What is your truest calling, right? So I think that this is the cutting here. We need to cut our karma with our families, right? But at the same time, honor the culture, right? If our family or our karma leaves these pair of shoes in us for us to step in and fill them, we'll never be fulfilled, right? But that doesn't mean that just because the pressure from our family comes on that we ignore the rituals, tradition, and cultures of our ancestors, right? So there's this balance here of it's like, okay, this is what my grandpa wants me to be. I'm good, but I love you. Let's get together for the holidays, right? It's this kind of energy, right? You have to be true to yourself. And to do that, sometimes we have to step away from these karmic pressures that our families put on us. I see a lot of family karma in this position. Okay, I got the cue. Give me a Krittika example here.
So my ascendant is in Krittika and Rahu is in Krittika.
Ascendant, so you have Rahu ascending.
Yes.
Rahu ascending in Krittika.
Well, I'm a Taurus ascendant.
Is it on the Taurus side?
Yeah.
Nice. That's actually by some astrologers to be considered. Now, the nodes don't have dignity. By some, that's considered exaltation, right? Why would, and it doesn't make a lot of sense, because then why would Rahu be exalted in a sun-influenced nakshatra, right? And the answer is because the power that's contained in Rahu and Krittika is extreme, right? I've seen positions in Rahu and Krittika, these huge risings of power, leadership positions and things like that. But because it's in your ascendant, it's not really affecting a specific area of your life. It's more affecting your evolution in general, right? Because we looked at that earlier. It's kind of a lifelong energy. The mirror is in the ascendant. So it's like there's going to be a lot of lessons for you about how you perceive yourself when you look in the mirror, right? And that energy, when you apply it to certain things of like, wanting to make things better, it's very beneficial, right? But there's this lesson of, non-judgment, right? The capacity with this Rahu and Krittika energy, it aspects the 7th, where Ketu is. So there's this possible energy in your chart to have these extremely beautiful, meaningful spiritual connections and relationships with people. But if you're constantly cutting them apart and dicing yourself, those relationships are never going to have the potential that they could have. So I would say that with that position of Rahu and Krittika, it really wants to release a lot of power in your self-understanding and self-confidence, right? And empowerment. But that's going to come from being able to take your kind of challenges, your weaknesses, and your flaws and give yourself some grace, right? You're not perfect, but you're doing great. Rohini Nakshatra. 10 to 23.2, Taurus, Moon, Brahma, Prajapati, and the Chariot, right? The attractive one, the magnetic one, the beautiful one, the Moon's favorite nakshatra, right? The strong energy of Rohini is it creates a magnetism, right? There's a magnetism, there's an attraction, right? Now that manifests on the internal and external. On the internal, it means that, now of course it depends what position is here, but it usually will create this energy where people are drawn to you, people are attracted to you, they're kind of like you have an affinity, and people will kind of come to you, right? And they look at you. When the moon is in Rohini, it's the most beautiful position, right? Because, oh, it just looks so beautiful. The moon is in its happy place, right? That means that there is this energy of magnetism, attraction, and power, right? And with great power comes great responsibility. The Dharma of Rohini Nakshatra is to be a role model, right? Because people are going to be attracted. I've seen a lot of Rohini positions, and these people have hundreds of thousands of Instagram followers and all of these things, and all they do is take selfies in a mirror, right? Right? They have this attractive magnetic energy, and they're so unaccountable to it, right? So the evolutionary spectrum of Rohini is to understand, okay, I have this magnetic attraction energy. How can I be a positive role model, right? How can I use that influential capacity to have a positive impact on other people's lives, right? So maybe instead of taking a selfie in the mirror, maybe I'll write some things about self-love, right? Maybe I'll write some things about honoring your elders, right? Maybe, like think about it as well, like in our society, and I've seen this with certain celebrities, famous musicians, famous athletes, people of power, right? And like all they do is party. You know what I mean? They're there, or they're sleeping with all these multiple partners. They're doing drugs and alcohol, and there's just like this energy where it's like, why does it seem that the people with the most power are the worst role models? It's Rohini Nakshatra. It's probably they have a prominent Rohini position where it's like, okay, they're drawn to be seen, but they're not rising to the occasion. So the Dharma of the Rohini Nakshatra is to be, I called it the OG social media influencer. Because even before there was, Instagram and TikTok, they were out there influencing people. You go into the town center, you go into the town village, and there's a strong Nakshatra position. There's kind of like a crew of people around them, kind of hanging out, chilling. And people are drawn towards them. So people will look at you if you have a Rohini position, right? And you have to say, okay, I'm being looked at. So the Dharma of this Rohini Nakshatra is to actually rise to that position and say, okay, I need to be moral, I need to be ethical, I need to, because the ethics of it as well is that it's like, it's one thing to influence an adult who's able to make their own decisions, right? But there's a youth, right? And in our world and society today, there's such a harsh negative influence on the youth who have no control over how they're being influenced, right? Some like 23-year-old or, musician is posting a selfie, so then this 11-year-old girl thinks it's appropriate to post a selfie of her. What type of influence is this? So we have to understand that it's one thing to have an influence on adults who are capable of making their own decisions and are not fully formed in who they are. But as children are forming, and this is actually a motherly position, right? The moon in it's motherly. What is the mother's role? To be a good influence on the child, to show her what a woman is. So there's this beautiful kind of, and then the question is it's a very devotional nakshatra, right? The Dharma of the Rohini Nakshatra is to be devoted, right? If you have a Rohini position, you don't like anything. You love things, right? You either have no interest in it or you become obsessed with it, right? So then the question or the Dharma of this nakshatra is then, what are you devoted to, right? Are you devoted to family? Are you devoted to service? Are you devoted to having a relationship with the higher power of your understanding? Or are you devoted to pleasure seeking, monetary gains? You know, are you devoted towards selfishness? You know, so it's understanding that this devotional energy, because that's really what people are attracted to, devotion, right? We're all here at a Jyotish conference, devoted to Jyotish, and we're all so attracted to it, and we're all sharing in that devotion, right? So it's this energy of, okay, what are you devoted to? When someone sees devotion in someone else, they're attracted to it. So as a Rohini position, you have a responsibility, you have a duty to make sure that your devotion is going in a higher direction so that you can be a positive influence to others. Who has a Rohini position they would like to share?
We'll stay on this side.
My ascendant is Revati, 2650, and I have Jupiter and Venus both in Rohini.
So you're a Revati ascendant, and then in your third house, right, you have Jupiter in what else?
Venus.
Jupiter and Venus in Rohini.
Jupiter at 1822, and I mean Venus at 1822 and Jupiter at 22, I think 26.
You know, Jupiter and Venus in Rohini, that can be difficult, right? The Venus in Rohini, it is going to be naturally very attractive, right? You're going to really have that magnetic energy. But the Jupiter in Rohini, it can be confused into thinking that just because you like something, it's okay, like it's positive, right? Like, oh, you know, you could be attracted to something, like, you know, that you want to go in that direction. And the Jupiter and Venus argument in Rohini will be like, you know, oh, well, I really think this is good, so then I should really go in that direction. And it wants to say, you know, is that direction in that choice that you're making upachaya, right? Is it going to lead towards growth, right? So really with that Jupiter and Rohini position, when it comes to your rising of your influence on other people, it's all growth indicated, right? In order for you to grow, you have to be the best person you can be a positive role model in all of this. But it's also saying, in order to feel like the full manifestation of your power, because there's a lot of divine femininity in that position for you, you're going to really have to understand that is the way that I'm impacting my relationships. You know, Jupiter is also the karaka for the husband here, right? There you go. And it's going to say, okay, am I being a role model to him, right? It's going to be a relationship, right? Oh, well, I want to do this thing, but is that setting a good example for him? Because if I do this thing, which is just fun, then he's going to do this thing, which is just fun, and it might not be good for either of us, right? So there's this rising of things that the choices you're making are a positive influence on him and are leading to this educational process for you. Like, are you able to see yourself as this attractive energy that is putting out something that other people can learn from, right? It's almost as if the way that you work on yourself has a trickle-down effect, and it will just cause other people to want to work on themselves too. So you just got to keep your side of the street clean. Mrigashira? Any Mrigashiris here? Mrigashiris? 23.2 Taurus to 6.4 Gemini, Mars, Chandra Soma, the deer head. You know, this is the seeker of Soma, the one that is seeking the Soma, right? What is Soma? It's this beautiful nectar that drifts off the moon that causes samadhi, right? Sounds nice, right? We all want to experience bliss. It's all part of our journey in this lifetime at times to experience bliss, right? Sometimes the way that bliss is experienced is that when the bliss hits us, when we experience that euphoria from the soma, whether we get it through meditation or chanting or whatever, we experience this brief glimpse of samadhi, and we want it to last forever, right? We get this taste of the soma, and we just want it to last, right? But it's fleeting, right? We've ever been in a deep chanting practice or anything, and we're like, oh my gosh, I'm one with Shiva, right? And then all of a sudden we get like this feeling of hunger in our stomach, and Shiva's gone, right? Or we have to pee or whatever it might be. It comes and it goes, right? So the dharma of Mrigashira Nakshatra is to always be seeking, right? Don't rest on the laurels of your last glimpse of samadhi. What's the next one, right? You know, because there's an attachment, overcoming a lesson of attachment in Mrigashira Nakshatra. You know, when I call this the one that's always seeking, right? You know, it's the destination-oriented individual, right? They're destination-oriented. Oh, this is a goal that I have, and I will never be happy until I reach this goal, right? Then, the karma of this nakshatra, they reach that goal, and they're still unhappy, right? That's rough. Then they're like, oh my gosh, what's the point of life? Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. When actually in the process of working towards that goal, they could have smelled the flowers, right? We all know stop and smell the flowers. That's the Dharma of Mrigashira Nakshatra. Stop and smell the flowers. Yes, it's good to have goals and dreams and ambitions and to seek those things which you believe will give you soma, right? But understanding that that is just momentary. Like when you find that brief glimpse at the end of the road with everything that you've always been looking for, it comes and it goes in a brief instant. So then we have to go seeking the next thing, right? We have to keep looking. You know, this is a very mystical nakshatra. The Dharma of Mrigashira is to be mystical, right? And the mystical individual doesn't say, oh, this is my path, and once I get there, I'm one with God forever. No, the mystic says, okay, this is my path is as a seeker. I am constantly seeking. There is no goal. There is no end game, right? There's only to be going to that next thing which you believe will bring you closer to God, that will bring you closer to satisfaction. You know, in our attempt to, so there's a difficult lesson which is associated with Mrigashira Nakshatra, is that because there's this seeker energy, there's supposed to be disappointment. Because it's like, oh, I have this goal, right? And I'm never going to get there. Like every time I try to get towards this goal, it just goes further and further back. It's evading me, it's evading me, it's evading me, right? Because you're looking at that goal for everything that you want to be okay. I reach this goal and I'll be fine, right? Okay, you know, there's a million different ways. I need this position in my career. I need tenure and I'm a teacher. I need to get a graduate degree. I need to have 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl, right? We set these very specific things, and then if we don't get them, it's like, oh, you know, I'll never be happy, right? So you have to, the dharma of the nakshatra here and the remedy is to cherish the little victories, right? Okay, so maybe you didn't have 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl, but you have 1 child. That's a victory, right? That's a victory. That's something to be, that's soma, that's bliss, right? And guess what? If you didn't want 3 children and you weren't working to that goal, you would have never had 1. So it's actually, even though the destination helps us get to where we need to be, it's the little victories that's actually the dharma, to appreciate the things along the way, you know? It's like, okay, well, I'm never going to be happy until, it's in the second house, right? I'm never going to be happy until I have a 7-figure savings account, right? This could cause this very difficult, two things are going to happen. One is that even if you get to that $1 million, it will only bring pain, right? Because first of all, that's not, if you're seeking kind of some like form of bliss through material gains, it's only going to be super temporary. But if you get to $999,099, right, and you're $1 short, right, you might compromise and sacrifice everything to get that last dollar. And then once you get to that point, it's not even worth it because you've already lost so much in order to get there, right? So again, to really summarize this energy of the Dharma of Mrigashira and Nakshatra, it's to always be seeking. Know what your goals and your dreams and your destinations are in this lifetime. Know what you're striving for. But in the process of going towards it, be realistic that you may never get that and appreciate the journey along the way, right? That is the journey of the mystic. It's the day-to-day experience to bring closer to God, Who's got a Mrigashira position?
So moon in the 5th with Mrigashira, 27 degrees, Capricorn ascendant.
Okay, moon in the 5th.
In Mrigashira,
Yeah,
Capricorn ascendant.
Capricorn ascendant, moon in the 5th.
If it helps, Mars is in the 11th.
And Mars is in the 11th. That's a beautiful position for the development of your spiritual potential. You know what I'm saying? That's like a very mystic position. And I've seen you dancing and chanting, and you're a very mystical guy. Spicy, though. And there's this Radha Krishna thing going on here. There's as you develop spiritually and you grow spiritually, there's going to be this deep yearning for like a partner, like someone who can, as you're growing spiritually, that can honor that about you and recognize that about you, and you can see that in them, and it's a beautiful Shiva Shakti, right? Right. So it's almost like looking for like this divine companion energy, right? And it's very like, the Mrigashira is that it's like the destination of that is to think, okay, I'm never going to be happy until that person is here, right? I know your K2's in the 7th house too. I'm never going to be happy until that person comes and we feel this energy exchanging together, right? The Mrigashira is going to teach you that person, their height, their weight, their smell, their orientation, it is not going to be what you thought it was. It's going to be better. But as long as you have a very sharp perception of how you think that looks, they could come right into your life and you could let them walk past you, right? Because you think it's going to look and perceive a certain way, right? So it's about like understanding, there's all these things that I'm looking for, right? But let's just see what happens along the way, because I need to be able to be present in that moment and just feel the natural chemistry, right? But I do see from a predictive side, I know that you're concerned potentially about like long-term family and partnership, and I do see that for you. I do see that for you. Okay, Ardra Nakshatra. Ardra is 6.4 to 20 degrees Gemini. It's Rahu, and I love the Rahu Nakshatras. Rudra, and a teardrop. Rudra is like fierce, right? Rudra, one of my favorite forms of Lord Shiva, is like, it's supposed to strike fear, right? That awakens consciousness, right? Kalidas was actually talking about this earlier today. He said that pain is the greatest grace, right? That is Ardra. Pain is grace, right? Suffering is grace, right? It's like when we're having this overwhelming emotional moment, and it's, even if it's sad, right? We're having this overwhelming emotional moment. Oh, this person I love is dead. And then the tear falls, right? And when that tear falls off your cheek, you're like, oh my gosh, yes, that's true, but it's okay. The power of crying to satiate the suffering, right? Because when you cry, crying is the recognition of grace. Right? When you cry, you're saying, you know what? This happened for a reason. Right? As horrible as it is the most, despicable things happen in our modern society. When we cry, it's our spirit recognizing that even though it shouldn't have happened, it did, and there's meaning behind it. There's value behind it. There's something to be gained from it. So, the real dharma of Ardra is to learn to feel your emotions, right? We have to understand that if we fight our tears, right, then there is no satisfaction. There's only this victim mentality, right? Ardra is saying, there is this karma, Phalam, in Ardra, which is like, I see it a lot of times, like PTSD, like there's even situations in Ardra where there's like rape in the family or murder in the family, like all sorts of horrible things can happen, right? And if we don't feel those feelings and allow them to process, right, we will be a victim the entirety of our life. The Dharma of Ardra Nakshatra is to eradicate the victim mentality, to process your emotions and allow yourself to have this type of integrity where it's like, okay, no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay as long as I can cry. I'm going to be just fine as long as I can cry. And what that does is it allows you to appreciate these incredible moments, because when your life is full of pain, when your life is full of sorrow, when your life is full of difficult experiences, when life is good, when life is like semi-normal, which might not happen that often for Ardra, but it will happen, you're going to be so grateful that you're going to cry for happiness, right? It's that the tears of sadness are worth the tears of happiness. It's better than not feeling anything ever. Ardra, Dharma, they have so much empathy. They have so much compassion because when they've suffered and they've gotten to the other side of it as part of their evolutionary spectrum. So when they see someone else, they're able to really be there for them and say, but it's a tough love. Remember, Rudra is not like, oh, it's okay, cry, cry, cry. Rudra is like, okay, you got it out, move on. Right? Stop like sitting in that place of, woe is me, pity party, and hold yourself accountable to a higher way of living. So it really wants you to appreciate the beauty of life. That's a huge thing with the Dharma of Ardra Nakshatras. Okay, I can only appreciate the beauty of life when I've experienced suffering and pain and I've gone to the other side of it, right? So it's like, really being able to, like, I know certain people that have Ardra positions and they're very soft, right? They're very soft because they'll just like hear like one song and then they'll start crying. Right? Because why? Because, oh my God, this song is so meaningful. It's because music is like, it's an expression of the spiritual journey. It's the warrior's journey to overcome pain. I mean, the vast majority of songs are about overcoming heartbreak, overcoming loss, overcoming grief. So when they hear that experience, it connects to them to this deep spiritual layer of themselves. It will create a certain dharma of Ardra Nakshatra where they're serious, right? Rudra is not lighthearted. Rudra is very serious. There's a seriousness to them, right? And that seriousness, it creates the Rahu austerity, the austerity of Rahu, which is that, you know what? There's so much pain and trauma and suffering in life. That's not a joking matter, right? To have empathy, okay, so there's times where someone will share something that's really vulnerable and sensitive, and then someone else will laugh, right? That is because they probably don't have a very mature Ardra position or haven't gone through this Ardra lesson, because there is a seriousness to people's emotional experiences and to honor their suffering, to honor their path, to honor what they've gone through. Last thing I'll say I could talk about the Rahu. Good you're keeping me on track there, Dr. D, because when it comes to these Rahu Nakshatras, I could probably do the full 4.5 hours on them. The last thing I want to say is something my teacher, Dr. Vasant Lad, said. He said, there's nothing greater than confusion. Because the moment you realize you're confused, you're clear. This is Ardra. The Dharma of Ardra is to be really confused, realize it, and then be like, okay, now I see how things are. So it's kind of like a waking up, right? A waking up, right? Okay, who here has an Ardra position? Kapil?
So it's Venus in Ardra, 12th house, Cancer ascendant.
Venus in Ardra, you're Leo. Oh, what are you, Cancer ascendant?
Yes.
Okay, so you're Cancer ascendant and your Venus is in Ardra. Oh, this makes perfect sense for you. You're a sensitive guy. You're sensitive. The Venus in Ardra in the 12th house, that's a very difficult position in some ways, because many of the things how you thought your life was going to be, probably as a young man, it did not turn out this way. There's going to be certain things, maybe it has to do with people you thought were going to be around forever. Friendships you thought were going to be around forever. People in your life, jobs and things like this, the things that you desired, the things that you thought were going to bring you happiness, won't, right? But Venus in Ardra is going to teach you that there's way more happiness not in those things. There's way more happiness in family. There's way more happiness in your relationship with God. There's way more happiness in just realizing that, here's what I like to say about your position. If you, as a young man, got everything that you wanted in your life, you would be selling yourself short, because God has a much greater plan.
Also in Taurus.
What's that?
Saturn in Mrigashira,
Saturn and Mrigashira as well?
11th house.
Saturn and Mrigashira as well. Okay, good. So you'll have money one day too. Okay, Pushya. What's that? Oh, right. Punarvasu. 20 Gemini to 3.2 Cancer, Jupiter, Aditi, and the quiver, right? Punarvasu, I did a world predictions panel with Charlotte Benson over there. Hi, Jyoti Devi. Joni Petrie and Camilla Sutton, and one of the things that I discussed was that Jupiter is having this extremely long transit in Punarvasu, and it retrogrades to the last minute of Punarvasu before it goes direct in it again. And I just thought this was so incredible because it shows that Jupiter wants to be in this position as long as possible, literally to the day that it couldn't be anymore. There's something so mystical about that, this root, this natural exaltation position here. Now, of course, it's on the Gemini side, but anyway, I still think, because I don't do Rashi astrology, I think of it as exalted through the whole Nakshatra. There is a connection to Aditi, which has to do with the worship of nature, right? It has to do with, so there are three kingdoms, right? There's the animal kingdom, there's the plant kingdom, and there's the human kingdom, right? The A dharma of this position is to value one of those kingdoms more than another, right? Most commonly, we value the human system, because we're human, right? I mean, even if you go back into listen, I don't want to get negative on Bible, but it's the world is given, man is given dominion over all things, right? This energy of we have power over all animals and all plants, right? But by doing that, I think if it's kind of this weird power mechanism to make us lose our wisdom from nature and animals and to look towards humans to teach us things. There's way more knowledge and wisdom to be integrated from the careful and quiet observation of nature, right? I mean, go to New York, go to Times Square. I'm an East Coaster. You go to New York, you go to Times Square, and you walk out, and everyone's honking, and everyone's yelling at each other, F you, and screw you, and, oh yeah, that's really how we should be interacting with people, right? How about you go out and you go to these beautiful Sidonian red rocks, and you sit out there, and you see, these trees that are, they're so affected by the vortex that they're all, windy and, thin in certain areas and thick in other areas, because the vortex affects the trees like that. That tree has adapted to being in the vortex, and it has turned it into essentially some type of mandala, right? There's an adaptation to nature, right? Nature adapts, right? That's why cactuses can survive even in a desert, right? There's so much that can be learned from our observation of plants and trees, their adaptability. They don't move, right? They stay there with their roots in the ground. Here we are all over the place running around like chickens with our head cut off in a wild, wild rat race, right? When there's literally, all we have to do is just exist, right? Like trees, right? There's just so much to be learned here, right? Animals, right? Is Louis in here, John? Louis is my brother Kalidas's dog. He is the most sweetest, kindest, most easygoing dog there is. He literally, I don't even think I've heard him bark. And when my brother walks into the room, Louis is in heaven. He just saw God's face. Right? There's this unconditional love that animals teach us, right? Especially, and it's so easy for us to be harsh, you know what I mean, on each other and critical. I mean, we all have all of these nakshatras. There's many which are intellectual and discerning, right? But that energy that a pet that is treated with love has for their pet owner, or whatever the right term is, right, is literally the love that God has for us, right? So my point in the Dharma of this position is to observe how trees are, observe how flowers are, Observe how dogs are. Observe how, a bird that chews up the food and it feeds it to their child. Like all of these things we can observe and see, oh my gosh, I really should be more like this, right? The Punarvasu Dharma is to be more like the dog, to be more like the plant, to be more like the tree, to be calm. The A Dharma of Punarvasu is like this rat race, chicken without its head off energy, which is like, oh my gosh, I'm just like running around and I can't focus on anything. And the Dharma is serenity. Kashana, moment to moment awareness. We only experience moment. When a dog or a plant can't think about the future. A tree isn't thinking about when it's going to get watered. It just wait till it rains. Right? There's no this, oh, what's the next thing? They're just existing. They have faith that God is going to take care of everything. And that's the real position of here. It's a bhakti nakshatra. Right? It's a bhakti nakshatra that is saying, have faith. Right? Have faith like a tree has faith that it'll get watered by the rain. Like a dog has faith that its owner will come home and feed it. Right? Have this level of faith, right? So I think the Dharma of this position, the real question is where does your education come from, right? This is a lot of Punarvasu people, they're extremely highly educated, graduate school and all of these types of things, and that's great and all. But where does your education come from? Because the A Dharma here is that you're learning from something that's polluted or that it's perverse, right? Right? This is a guru nakshatra, right? How hard is it in our modern day and world to find a guru that's actually authentic, right? That isn't doing something naughty behind closed doors, right? So we're looking for something here in someone else in a modern society which can be found on a walk in nature, right? So we want to actually look towards creation to learn from as the primary teacher versus things that can be polluted, right? An animal or a plant, it doesn't have this lower vibration. So again, the Dharma of this Punarvasu position is to really be serene and connected to plants and animals. When the A Dharma is to be like looking in to learn from places and things that lead to nothingness. Who has a Punarvasu position? Kapil, we just did you. In the back.
This is going to be good.
Oh, okay, Arya.
I have Mars and Jupiter in my 10th house, Virgo ascending.
You have Mars and Jupiter in the 10th house in Punarvasu.
Yes.
Oh, I know that. I'm your astrologist. I should know that. So this is going to show that the energy of your career, it has to do with being in tune with the nature of things, right? I mean, I already know a little bit of the work that you do, but it's about whatever you're going to be doing for your career, it's in harmony with the universe, right? So I would say that, and you're a Virgo, because that's a service you're providing as a Virgo ascendant. So it's like your job is to put people in a position to be in harmony, which means you're going to have to find the things in their lives that are taking them out of harmony and show them to them. Be like, listen, this thing in your life, this person, this way that you look at yourself, this thing that you think is the end all be all, right? It's actually creating a delusion. Right? So there's this service you're providing, but I would say that really your purpose is to be in harmony with nature on a very, very deep level, right? But because it's in your 10th house, you're also going to help other people do that as well.
Thank you.
Okay. I think I'm doing okay on time. I have to get through 14 Nakshatra. I have 8, 9. Okay, we're good. Pushya, 3.2 to 16.4 Cancer, Saturn, Brihaspati, and the Udder. Right? Brihaspati, the Lord of Prayers, Pushya, right? The Dharma of Pushya Nakshatra is to have a beautiful relationship with prayer, right? The lower energy, right? The lowest vibration of Pushya doesn't believe in prayer at all. They're like, praying to what? That doesn't work. You're talking to yourself. You're delusional. Like, I have some friends that are like atheists or whatever, and I like go and stay at my buddy's house in Brooklyn, New York. And I love him. We've been friends my whole life. And I was staying at his house, and I pray out loud over my bed every night. And I'm praying, and he's like, comes up to me after, he goes, bro, I think you need to see a doctor. He's like, what is wrong with you, man? Right? So that's again, the theme on here is like faith and service, right? Because when you have no prayer, how can you really be in service to God if you're not trying to make a conscious contact with it, right? So that's the lower energy. Then there's still, as it evolves, Pushya is like, okay, well, I kind of believe in a higher power, or I do believe in a higher power, so I'm going to ask it for something that I want, right? Oh, God, please kill all my enemies. Oh, please, dear God, can Bitcoin hit 140K? Oh, dear God, I really like that girl I met at the cafe. Can she be my wife? Right? These are the prayers that will never come true. Right? Whenever the way that prayer works, from my study of the Vedas, is that if you're praying for anything for you, it cannot come true. Prayer can only come true in 2 ways. One is if you're praying for someone else, or one is if you're praying for God's will, right? You pray, so you can have a prayer that's like selfless towards someone else, and I believe that it can come true. So the A Dharma of Pushya here is to first believe in God, right? To not believe in God is adharmic. You know, I'm not trying to be harsh. There's plenty of atheists out there which are ethical, right? But there's an unevolved, if you have a Pushya position and you're atheist, there's some evolution that needs to happen there, right? And then the other higher side is to take that prayer, which is geared towards getting the things that you want and killing all your enemies, and actually make that prayer selfless, right? Dear God, give me the knowledge of your will and the power to carry it out. Dear God, I pray for my, friend's mom who is cancer, that if it's your will, Almighty God, will you please give her some relief from her pain and suffering, right? So that energy of when we're so caring about someone else that we're willing to pray for them, it's this energy that we want to help keep other people safe, right? The Dharma of Pushya Nakshatra is to feel safe and then help other people feel safe as well. It's this very I want you to feel safe. I want you to feel heard. You can be vulnerable here, right? Now, as this evolves, as this dharmic energy of giving and loving and devotion and selfless prayer and conscious contact with your higher gets stronger, right? You think that, now I just need to give. It becomes an addiction, right? And we give and we give and we give ourselves, and then it eventually becomes a sacrifice, a martyrdom. So there's on the other side of the spectrum, there's this codependency. I just so badly want other people to be happy and for them to feel safe that I'm willing to compromise my own safety. that I'm willing to compromise what I need to feel okay, right? And that's not okay either. This is another one of those nakshatras, which is very nuanced, right? Because there's a difference between compromise and slavery, right? Because when we do everything for someone else, and it's not this, reciprocal energy, it causes self-destruction, right? And I've seen Pushya positions which are just like emotionally like devastated because they give, and then the people that they're giving to are like, they can attract like a narcissistic energy where it's like, okay, they give, and the other person's like, I'll take it, right? And so there's this real balance between like this prayer for humanity, and that's kind of why one of the remedies I have for Pushya is like, instead of like praying for specific individuals, because you might try to answer the savior, right? Pushya has a savior complex, right? Which is like, I'm going to come in there and not only am I going to pray for you, but I'm going to answer your prayers myself, right? And that's not turning it over to God, right? That's saying, I'm taking my control over the situation. So the answering of other prayers, it comes through praying for like humanity, right? It comes through seva to not necessarily specific people in your life, but like strangers, right? Like, so the seva that isn't getting acknowledged, the seva to the person that doesn't know your name, doesn't know why you're doing it, that's like what's creating like this real beautiful, answering the prayers of humanity type energy. So again, the last thing I want to say here is like, as a Pushya, self-care is essential, right? It's like the oxygen mask drops off and it's like you got to like give yourself some oxygen. The self-care versus codependency is a big dynamic here. But yeah, it's one of the most beautiful positions because the Pushya people, I believe that their prayers are like exalted, which means that if you're praying for selfish things, there's more karmic consequence. When you're praying for things that are like, for the benefit of people and you're trusting in God's will, that it really creates a good karma. Who here has a Pushya position?
Online? Can we take online?
Okay, yeah, let's do
We have
online.
Nelda has a Pushya rising.
Who?
Nelda. And her Lagna Lord Moon is in Ashlesha.
Pushya rising. So it's all in the ascendant there.
Mm-hmm. Deep
Okay.
waters.
Pushya, Ashlesha. So the Ashlesha there is interesting because it's going to try to, this is a perfect example of something that is Pushya, because Ashlesha, which is the next one, it wants to try to understand things, right? So it's like, okay, I really think I know what God's will is, right? I think I know, so I'm going to pray for God's will, but I'm really putting my own flavor on it, right? So I would say the real dharma of this person is to kind of like let go of the intellect and be very, very open to a type of prayer which is very simple, right? Because their intellect with Ashlesha will try to pick it apart and say, okay, this is what I want, and it's going to think that it understands what God will is, so then there's no freedom, right? So it has, the real dharma of this position is to just like have a simple one sentence prayer would be the remedy that I would come up for this person, So I think that the real dharma of that type of Pushya and Ashlesha energy is to lean more towards a simplistic approach to the prayer versus something that can be interpreted. Speaking of which, Ashlesha. Ashlesha is 16.4 to 30 Cancer, Mercury, Naga, Serpent. Okay. We all have shadow, right? Shadow work, shadow self, right? The Ashlesha Dharma is the shadow journey. It's the shadow work, right? The Dharma to perceive one's shadow, right? The A-Dharma of Ashlesha, which manifests sometimes, is what shadow? What shadow? Everything I'm putting forth to you is exactly how I am. And anyone who thinks that they're like, have no shadow self is probably the sickest one. Right? We all have a shadow. So the real Dharma, first layer of Ashlesha Dharma, is accountability towards your shadow. There's no healing any shadow. There's no overcoming it. There's no working through of it until, yes, I admit I am a shadow. I have a shadow, right? Because guess what happens when you admit you have a shadow? Light goes on it. The shadow is removed, right? So until the real first layer, so the A-Dharma is like I'm consumed by a shadow and purely acting out of character defects. The higher side of Ashlesha, the first layer of it is I admit I have a shadow and I want to do something about it. You know, Ashlesha, I always say this about Ashlesha, that they can smell bullshit. I also say that you can't bullshit a bullshitter. Right? My grandma used to say that. She said, you're so full of shit, your eyes are turning brown. You know, so there's this, that's what I'm talking about. It's like you recognize in Ashlesha that you have certain qualities that you want to work on. The main qualities that I've seen in Ashlesha are dishonesty and manipulation, right? They're so smart that if they want to use that intelligence to take advantage of you, they will, and you'll have no idea you were taken advantage of. They will convince you that the thing that they want you to have is really what's best for you. Right? There's a total twisting of, it's almost like you're having other people conform to your will. There's a lot of, that's Naga, right? That's Naga, the power of the serpent, right? It's like, okay, this is what you need. So, the real Dharma is transparency. The real Dharma of Ashlesha is to be honest and be sincere and be forthcoming, right? It's like, you know who would make a really good car salesman is Ashlesha. They make a really good used cars salesman. You need this car. It is the best car. We just got it in, and it has your name written all. I mean, I'm not good at it, but your name's written all over it. Da 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 da. And you're like, yeah, I really need this car right now. Here's a check, right? But the evolutionary energy of Ashlesha would be like, listen. I know that this isn't the nicest car on the lot, right? But it drives well, right? And, you know, I can probably do a pretty good job on it and make it affordable for you, right? That honesty of I'm not trying to take advantage of you is the Dharma of Ashlesha. It's to say, okay, even though I have this tendency to manipulate, to take advantage of, to do what I can to get you to warp to my will, I want to empower you to make the own decision with the facts. There's this honesty, there's this truthfulness, there's this non-deception, which is the higher end of Ashlesha is there's no one with more integrity. There's no one with more integrity than Ashlesha because they have the vulnerability to be totally out of touch with an integrity and have overcome it. You know, they're also, because of the connection to Naga, is they're very discerning, kind of like Krittika. There's this very discerning energy, right? Which means they think that the way that I am looking at things is how they are, right? This is what, Jyotish, right? Jyotish, there's a million techniques, and everyone has there's a different, Ayanamsha, there's different dasha systems, there's different unequal and equal nakshatra positions, there's unequal house calculations, right? And the lower side of Ashlesha would be like, this is how it is, and this is how it should be, and if you're not doing it this way, you're wrong, right? Well, the higher side of Ashlesha is open-minded, right? The Dharma of Ashlesha is to be open-minded. This is what works for me, and just because you do it differently, there's nothing wrong with that. Actually, teach me how you do it. I could learn from that. What can I do to learn from you? So there's this real higher end of Ashlesha, which is they're probably some of the most open-minded as people too in their evolved state. So there's this really, that Ashlesha energy, it wants to, be very judgmental of other people's way of perceiving things. So there's a real Dharma of Ashlesha, which is to be non-judgment. Separate but equal. Like, even though we're perceiving things differently, that doesn't take away from your truth of it. I mean, here we're all practicing Vedic astrology, and people have beautiful Western tropical astrological experiences, right? And so it's like, who are we to judge? You know what I mean? Their authentic experience. To take that away from them, that's not fair. So I think those are some of the lessons at the root of Ashlesha. Who here is Ashlesha? Hold on, just so the virtual audience can hear you.
So Jupiter retrograde in Ashlesha, 1941, and it's conjunct with Ketu, which is 6.32 in Pushya Nakshatra.
Okay, so Jupiter, Ketu. Jupiter's retrograde in Ashlesha in which house?
Third house, Cancer ascendant, so which makes it exalted also.
Jupiter in Ashlesha. And you're a Cancer ascendant?
No, Taurus ascendant.
Okay,
but Jupiter
Taurus
is in
ascendant.
Cancer.
Got it. Okay. So there is there's two things. One that comes up as far as your evolutionary journey with the Jupiter Ketu is, the Jupiter Ketu actually in Ashlesha shows that you came into this lifetime with a ton of wisdom, right? There's a lot of knowledge, right? But opposite of this is Rahu in the 9th bhav, right? So the Rahu in the 9th bhav is saying, okay, well, I came in with all this wisdom, but Rahu is saying there's so much more wisdom to come, right? Actually, there's all this new wisdom, and if you're closed-minded to new forms of wisdom, you'll feel very unsatisfied at the end of your life. So it's really trying to help you be open-minded to all ways of looking at things, to perceiving things. I mean, with that Rahu in the 9th house aspected by all those energies in Ashlesha, it really is trying to get you to say, okay, it doesn't matter what I believe if it doesn't help me, grow as an individual, right? Beliefs only have utility. Beliefs are nothing if they don't have utility to improve other people's lives. And then the last thing is because of the Jupiter Ketu in Ashlesha, there's a karma here with your husband or your potential husband. Oh, but it's still but Jupiter is in Ashlesha, right? Yeah. So I would say that there's a karma here as well when it comes to your potential husband or whatever, that there's going to be it's going to require you to get to a place of being open-minded, almost similar to his, but it's a way of where the way that you think your partner looks, even potentially where they're from, it will not be this, right? So there's a strong karma of you having to be totally open-minded to all manifestations of a potential romantic partner in order for it to magnetize towards you.
Thank you.
Magha. Okay, I think I can cover these next 5.5 40 minutes. Okay, here we go. Magha, 0 to 13.2, Leo, Ketu, Pitras, and the throne, right? I mean, people think of Magha as like this incredible like leadership position. And it does create karmas that encourage like a rising of power, right? But the dharma of the nakshatra of Magha in its lower unevolved adharmic state is like, okay, I have a position of power. Yes, awesome. This is all about me, right? This position of power is the king for the king's people, right? They want bread, let them eat cake. This energy of I'm in a position of power, and anyone who isn't royal or regal or has a similar, affluent energy is dirt. Is dirt, right? They don't deserve any. They only see the divine in themselves. That is the lower energy of Magha. I only see the divine in, that's why I'm king, because I'm the best. I'm all that in a bag of chips, right? That's the Magha energy, is that I only see God in me, right? The real dharma of Magha Nakshatra is to understand that if you're in a position, like in a position of power, in a position of leadership, right? You didn't just get that position. God gave it to you, which is a huge responsibility. And the ultimate responsibility of that is to see God in everyone, right? Amma, right? She constantly teaches how God is in all of us, right? And that's I really feel like the true wisdom of the guru is to awaken that acknowledgement. I mean, even Jesus Christ, right? I mean, he was like this Krishna energy. It's like, I am God and so are you. So there is this energy of the taller the tree, the bigger the fall, right? Many times the unevolved manifestation of Magha, what happens is you get positions of power, you know what I mean? Matriarch or patriarch of the family, CEO, and I'm saying like athletic like leader or musical leader or whatever it might be. And you start to get this position of power, right? And then what will happen is when you're not seeing the divine in people, when you have that position, Ketu will come and cut the tree out from under you, and then it falls, right? I mean, this is a nakshatra which, I've noticed that people have horrible things found out about them. I would say that there's a bunch of people on the Epstein list with Magha Nakshatra, right? Power positions that have just taken advantage of it at the, creation of sin. A true king isn't a king for the kingdom, is a king for the people. A true king recognizes everyone's power in their community and gives them a position that makes them feel powerful. A corrupt king makes everyone feel less than so they can feel stronger. So there's this strong fluctuations of power in the Dharma of Magha Nakshatra. And if you have a really strong position of it, it can unlock a lot of power and a lot of success and a lot of happiness where the throne will be activated. But humility is essential, or it will come with catastrophic karmic consequences. The other thing is this is connected to the ancestors, the Pitras, right? Many ancestors, if we're all sitting in here and we can afford this conference, odds are our ancestors hooked it up, right? They probably, like my grandfather, his father, we left from the pogroms in Ukraine. There was like these anti-Semitic pogroms in the early 1900s. And on the immigration form, it was listed as his job was as a buttonhole maker. Right? So I guess his dad was a tailor and he would like make the holes for the buttons in the shirt. Quite a career. And to be able to honor that, you know, the honoring of our ancestors, right? That like sacrificed and compromised so much so that we could have this freedom that we have here. No, this, you know, world we live in, it's far from perfect, right? But we still have to honor the efforts of those that have sacrificed so much for our freedom, for our happiness, for our liberation, for our opportunities. You know? So there's this real striving to reach our full potential, right? The Magha is like this position of, I need to reach my full potential because my ancestors did everything to give me the opportunity to. So it's like, you know, the fact that, you know, our ancestors like sacrificed so much for our to just like sit in our like parents' basement on the couch and watch TV all day is the same thing as spitting in their face. You know, we have a responsibility to make the most of our life. That's how we honor our ancestors. It's at the root of Magha, right? Who here has a Magha position they'd like to share?
I have Magha in the 8th house in K2, and I have a Shravana ascendant.
Magha in the 8th house, in K2 Magha in the 8th?
Correct.
Wow. Wow. That's super deep. You know, like there's some astrologers that says that K2 has, like again, the nodes don't have dignity. We could debate about it forever. But I read this really interesting article about K2 being exalted in Magha. Because it shows that, so I would say that like your family has like deep wounds, like a karmic wound of like, you know, genocide. Something like this, where in your family's ancestral heritage or something like this, there has been a disempowerment, either like you know, you were kicked out of your country of birth, you were, you know, told that you were witches, whatever it was, there's this very strong energy that even though you were the most authentic leaders, that you were disempowered, you know? Like, it could be like where you were like an indigenous or native, and then like some group of people come in and they wipe you out, you know? Like how I would like understand that energy manifesting in this lifetime is that you have a very, very strong mystical connection to your ancestors, like they're always with you, right? And not only did they, my intuition here is that like not only did they sacrifice, but they died, right? Early, tragic deaths, so that you could have this opportunity at where Rahu is, right? Financial freedom, independent freedom, family freedom. You know, so, you know, I would say that in your chart, the sacrifice of your ancestors is extremely significant. And it's almost like you're in this position to like, you know, make them super happy just by living your best life. You know? Okay, Purva Falguni. 13.2 to 26.4 Leo, Shukra, Bhaga, Hammock, or Lingam. So Purva Falguni is a very relational nakshatra, right? It's all about our relationships. It's all about how we interact with other people, right? The dharma of Purva Falguni is to learn love's true nature, right? which means the A-dharma, the unevolved manifestation of Purva Falguni, is to really have no idea about love's true nature, which is usually what we call, it's like utilitarian. It's like an exchange. It's like, oh, my relationship is only what you can give to me, is what I can get out of you, right? It's this, it's a transactional relationship is the word I was looking for. The unevolved manifestation of Purva Falguni is transactional. It's like, people come to this country and they want to become immigrants, so then I'll marry you. So then you can become, like I've had so many clients that like do this and then are like really unhappily married. Because why? You married someone just so they could become an immigrant, migrate to this country, but at what cost? The karmic contract is extreme. So the real first layer of overcoming this energy is understanding that transactional relationships are useless, right? It's a two-way street, right? And we have to think of, is this relationship in harmony with both people equally? Is this ideal? And of course, this is a romantic and very lovey-dovey kind of thing, but it's not just our romantic relationships, right? It's all of our relationships. What layer of transactionism is there, right? Or is this something where we actually, like the love's true nature is actually wanting what's best for someone else, right? So there's this real evolution in wanting what's best for someone else, which is not what you want for them. I'd say that there is a dharma of this nakshatra to have a divine relationship. Ideally, how that manifests is that your romantic partner who you married and have a family with, that's a divine partnership, right? Unfortunately, many charts have karmas that's not part of the journey, right? It doesn't mean that you can't have a divine partnership. It just means that it's not sexual in its nature. It might not lead to children, but the karma of having to experience a divine partnership is the same. I mean, I took philosophy of love and sex when I was in college, and we learned that one of the strongest philosophies of love is that you can only love another human in a fraction of how you can love God, right? Your divine partner is just a manifestation of God. For you, that's God's will, that's your partner, right? So that's this divine partnership, not, like how happy does my wife or husband make me? And no, it's like, oh my God, God put this person in my life and I need to worship that. Whether it's our parents, right? Our parents are our parents, right? We have to honor that. That's a divine relationship. Our siblings, our closest friends. It's not just happenstance, right? It's a karmic connection. So we have to honor the divinity of that relationship. The issue with Purva Falguni is part of the lower energy is that we're all here to help other people we're all here to self-realize and help other people self-realize. You know what I mean? And in that process of like self-realization, right? We want relationships that are mutually awakening, right? Unfortunately, everyone is at a different frequency. So what happens in these like karmic dynamics is that people will pull you down before you can pick them up. Like in recovery, we say we don't hang out with people that drink or do drugs because guess what? They'll get you drunk or high way before you get them clean. It's the same energy, right? You have to be so careful about the nature of your relationships because every single person is either lifting you up or bringing you down. When you recognize that a certain person in your life, like Pashaji here for me, is lifting me up, right? He raises my frequency when I'm with him. I feel it, right? I can honor our relationship as a divine brotherhood, right? It's these type of things that really help you realize that the relationships in your life that lower your frequency, you want to eradicate them, and the relationships that are in your life that are of a higher frequency, you want to worship them, So it's really like seeing the people in your karmic circle as manifestations of God, right? So you wouldn't disrespect God, so you won't disrespect someone that you love and care for, you know? And therefore knowing that the people in your life are there to for your frequencies to rise together, you now have a responsibility to have a positive impact on them, right? It's like, you know, people, you know, there's like a dynamic. Okay, I had a long day at work and, you know, someone is at home preparing dinner. Gender's not discussed, right? And then the person comes home from work and they're stressed out, but the person at home's been slaving away on dinner all along, right? So the person comes home from work and they're in a bad mood and they're just, you know, and the person who was at home preparing dinner couldn't wait to have the person that they know has been working so hard at work to come home and enjoy this beautiful feast, right? But they come home and say, oh, leave me alone. I had a bad day at work and oh, it's just, you're so annoying right now. I don't care what you made for dinner, right? That's like giving the middle finger to God. You know, you have to really revere that energy and you have to hold yourself accountable to when that you know you're in a divine relationship, to being the best version of yourself, even when it's not easy. Yeah. Who here has Purva Falguni?
It's rising, it's Leo. You want the ascendant?
Yeah, it's
Or-
rising Leo.
No, sorry, the ascendant is Leo in 1433.
Okay, so your ascendant's in Purva Falguni. Yeah.
Wanted
Yes, that's great. Where's your Venus?
Leo,
Oh, your Venus is also ascending.
yeah. Magha.
Okay, so Lagna is in Purva Falguni.
Yeah.
Venus is in Magha. What else do you need, son?
No, that's fine. You know, like you're extremely sensitive to other people's frequencies. I've noticed that with you here. You're in such a good place because you're feeling all of everyone's good energy that's like similar to your energy and you're lifted up to it, you know? That you're also equally vulnerable to being taken to hell, you know, through people's lower, and the Magha Venus thing too, it's very like, you have a lot of lessons in your chart about humility. So when you're around ego, even if it's not manifesting or expressed, you're contaminated by it. You know? So yes, there's a very strong hypersensitivity to ego, especially as negatively influencing your energy. So the ideal thing for you, especially in a romantic partner, is like a very like, you know, humble energy, and just in general, it's probably in your best interest to not really interact with too many people of like high position for too long. You know, it's just you're really salt of the earth type people is your kind of thing. Okay, we'll do one more. Uttar Palguni, 26 for Leo, 10 Virgo, Sun, Aryaman, and the fig tree. You know, this is Uttar Palguni cusp, you know, and it's like, I call this the perfection, the striving for perfection, the striving for truth, the striving for exactly the perfect manifestation of something. The Dharma of Uttar Palguni is to reach your full potential, right? The vision of the potential. I say this as, this will describe the A-Dharma and the Dharma of it quite well. The Uttar Palguni sees the way things could and should be. Could is the gift. Kut is the Dharma. I see the potential of everyone, and I see the potential of everything, and I see how this world can be a better place, and I see how this person can be a better person, and I see it all. You can't help but see it, right? Seeing the way things should be, that's the A Dharma. That's my way or the highway. That's just because I think that this is a potential. It needs to be this way, not just for me, not just for you, but everybody, right? I should really just like be the president, right? Uttar Palguni, I really should be the one who like kind of directs the universe, right? It's almost like godly. I want to be God, right? So it's this limitless potential, which is beautiful, and it's saying that potential, which is my subjective perception, should be objectively true for everyone, which is at the core of this weakness. You know, it's like to strive for all of that energy of Uttar Palguni, which is geared towards wanting things to be better. It likes to go towards other people. Like, I always say this, the Uttar Palguni, that energy of like improving things and making things better, they're extremely talented, like engineers, like career people, like because they're able to really kind of like see issues in things and like rectify them, you know? But like the Uttar Palguni person could be very difficult relationally, right? Because it's like, oh, I'm being like prodded and poked and I'm never good enough. You know, so there's a real strong energy here to temper one's expectations, especially when it comes to other people. Like that energy of like wanting things to be their best, it's way better spent on oneself than it is on trying to fix other people. First of all, who wants to be fixed? No one wants to be fixed, right? Have you ever tried to fix someone? It doesn't work, right? It just creates resentment, right? So it's really kind of like not having an expectations of others is the real dharma of this position. It's kind of like saying, you know what? Yeah, I see the way that things could be improved in your life. But unless you're coming to me and asking for advice about how it's going to be improved, it's not my place to go telling you, or asserting my will on you, or forcing you to come, follow it. You know? There's a strong spiritual principle of hope here, right? When we see the perfection of things, we can have hope, right? We can have hope that someone who has an obstacle in their life can see that obstacle eventually and overcome it. Right? There's this principle of hope. I need to be hopeful that I can overcome everything in my life if I'm Uttar Palguni. You know? They're very hopeful people, very optimistic, right? They want everything to be perfect and ideal, and there's a beautiful potential for that, right? But it's like, hope is not always realistic, right? Hope, it sounds kind of cynical, but it's like sometimes that hope that you have for someone else. Listen, my brother, like, I had so much, not my brother who's here, my other brother, he was a heroin addict. I had hope forever that he was going to, like, get clean. You know what I mean? I was hopeful, but eventually, like, he died from a heroin overdose. You know what I mean? It's like the cruel truth sometimes is that, like, sometimes hope is something we need to carry in our lives and ourselves, but we can't expect that for the world or we'll be sorely disappointed, right? So that expectation that we have on others to manifest our vision of their lives for them needs to be tempered in Uttar Palguni. So again, there's a daily battle for perfection, striving for perfection, especially in one's own life, while being very realistic that that's impossible. Right? Striving for what's best, trying to get close to it, and then just being okay. You know? Okay, so Uttar Palguni, who has Uttar Palguni?
I have moon in Uttara Phalguni, 9th house.
Ninth house?
Yeah, Capricorn ascendant and sun in Pushya.
Moon in Uttar Palguni in the ninth? Nice. I like that. I like Uttar Palguni in a religious direction or in an educational direction, because it shows that, as you evolve throughout your lifetime, you will become like very learned, very well educated, very spiritual, you could even have like a more not in a negative way, but like a more religious approach to things as you kind of evolve. So there's a lot of like reaching your spiritual potential energy that's really beautiful, and I think with your moon there, like having a guru, that is like, no one's perfect, but like a guru that you can look up as perfect would be really probably natural for you to find that person. And, I think that there would feel like an emptiness without the guru. And then the other thing that I wanted to say here is that your spiritual truth, your religious understanding of how the universe is and your morals and ethics, that's a very strong moral and ethical position. You're like clearly a very like kind, generous, thoughtful person, very considerate and respectful. That's all of those energies are in that position. Other people are not that way. And it's going to, in order for you to, just because other people are not that way, it doesn't give you an excuse to not be that way anymore, right? You have to hold yourself to that highest standard, right? Because if you're comparing how you are with other people's society, it's a losing battle, Okay, we'll take a short break till 2:00, and I would try to come back on time. I do have a lot to get to. Thanks.